Today, in the media conference with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Caru News, Organ Donation India Foundation, and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And today, in our Thought Leadership series, which we are going to have, our topic is MSME in 2021. Crisis moments create opportunity. Problems and crises ignite our greatest creativity and thought leadership as it forces us to focus on things outside the norm. Thought leadership is fundamental in business today and consists primarily of finding and sharing great information in a way that attracts and retains. Thought leadership is when a leader's thoughts are being used by leaders to lead others. Thought leadership is influencing a narrative by understanding what needs to be done. A thought leader can be recognized as an authority in a specific field and whose expertise is sought and often rewarded. That can be an expert, a historical figure, or a wise person with worldly impact. In this series, we will be asking straight questions and we expect a straight answer from our thought leader. And today's on this topic of MSME in 2021, our thought leader is Ms. Vinita Hariharan. Welcome, Ms. Vinita Hariharan, on our show. Ms. Vinita Hariharan is the national level public policy expert. She is the Chief of Programs, Ministry of MSME, Government of India. Ms. Vinita has had an illustrious academic journey and an exemplary professional and public life. An alumnus of the prestigious School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, she worked for a decade in leading private and public sectors of the country. At this juncture, driven by the aim of donning the hat of a decision maker from an implementer, she pursued her mid-career master's in public administration from the 𝐂𝐀𝐑𝐔 𝐍𝐄𝐖𝐒 School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore, on a scholarship from the Singapore government. This proved to be a game changer as she gained wide international perspective in policy making. Post this, she has been with various multilateral and bilateral agencies with the Government of India, where she designed national policies and led the implementation of several flagship programs of Government of India in the domain of rural, urban, and livelihood. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Urban Mission, formalization of micro enterprise being some of the key flagship programs designed by her. She is currently with the Ministry of MSME as Chief of Programs handling externally aided missions. Ms. Vinita is a public speaker and a thought leader in diverse issues of nation building. She is on the board of studies of leading global institutes and a mentor to social foundations that work towards empowering women and the girl child. Ms. Vinita was recently given the Women of Excellence Award from the Indian Achievers Forum for her outstanding contributions to the field despite all hurdles. Welcome, Ms. Vinita Hariharan on our show. Ms. Vinita Hariharan, you are very much associated with MSME and you are in the public policies and as a thought leader. My first question, and I expect all the answers, straight answers from you. So my first question goes to you is, what is MSME?
Yeah, namaskar, Lal Goel ji. It's a pleasure to be on your show always. And apologies, I'm actually traveling, so it's a very necessary travel that I need to take. So I'm on the car. Regarding MSME, so as we all know, it is micro, small and medium enterprises. And there is a definition that the ministry has made for MSMEs. So there are certain turnovers and investment criteria, which is for micro, it is less than so many crores, and in turnovers and investment, there's so many crores. They've stipulated the turnovers, and based on that, micro, small and medium enterprises are classified by the Ministry of MSME. So it's a ministry classification. And right now, we have about 63 crore MSME based on a sample survey done by the statistical department, but that's only a sample survey size. As of now, we have about 57 lakh MSMEs registered on the Udyam Aadhaar portal, which is the ministry's portal for registering MSMEs. So the benefit of registering as an MSME for any unit is that it gets you can avail of the various subsidies that the government of India is offering, and the various subsidized loans and collateral-free loans that the government of India offers to MSME. So that is the advantage of classifying oneself as an MSME. And right now they have also included the service sector as well as the retail units under MSME umbrella. So it practically covers all the enterprises across the country, an MSME.
Okay. Now I will just, as you have given some data, I also have some data. The micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, play an oversized role in the growth of Indian economy, contributing around 6.11% of the manufacturing GDP, 24.69% of the services GDP, and 34% of India's manufacturing output. They provide employment to around 120 million people and contribute around 45% of the overall exports from India, with nearly 6.35 crores units spread throughout India. India's MSMEs have consistently maintained a growth rate of over 10% until recently. Do you agree with these data, or you would like to add anything in that?
No, absolutely. This is correct data. And I think also the export figures, I don't know if you mentioned about the export, it also contributes about around an average of 40% to the India's exports as well. So okay. I think, yeah.
Okay. Total export, because for manufacturing, no. Export, I have no. 45% of the overall export, as per this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
around that.
Now, my question comes to you is, the MSME sector suffered multiple setbacks. The government has admitted in Parliament that 9% micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, have shut down during the pandemic. Your comments. You have put on mute.
Yeah. So absolutely, the pandemic has. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So the pandemic, it's definitely affected all sectors. Everybody globe has been affected, including MSMEs. But we understand that MSMEs have been hit harder, especially manufacturing MSMEs, because of the lockdowns that were imposed, especially in the first phase of COVID. So they had to shut down their units and all of that. And so because of which there was suffering done by the MSMEs. But I think the government was very quick to react in terms of providing the emergency credit lines and emergency credit loans under the Atmanirbhar package. Over 3 lakh crore was announced. And it was not just announcement. Around the last fiscal, I think around 9.5 trillion rupees has been given out as loans to the MSMEs, and most of these loans are collateral free loans. And so it's not that the MSMEs have not availed of these services. The last 2 years, a lot of demand has been, we have received a lot of demand for such collateral-free loans by the MSMEs. So I think the government of the day has done its bit to respond to the emergency situation in which the MSMEs are. But having said that, definitely the MSMEs suffered a huge loss during COVID, and post-COVID now we see a recovery happening. Slowly but surely we see the MSMEs coming out of the red post-COVID.
Okay, now I will give you one by one some facts, and I want your comments. First is the demand is down because of the COVID. Everybody knows that because of the lockdown and because of the financial hardship, the demand was low, and the people were not buying many things except the essential items. So the demand was down. A steep drop in customer orders was common across MSMEs. Export order cancellation hit 70 to 80% in April, according to Federation of India Export Organizations Chief Sharat Kumar Saraf. Your comment on that?
Yeah, so definitely during the lockdown, the demand, the supply chains and the demand, it was all affected, was all impacted. Demand was negatively impacted, as well as the supply was negatively impacted. So during the lockdown, what had to be done, and I think what was done was also to reorient the MSMEs towards what was essential during the lockdown, which was the masks and the gears and all the COVID equipment. So MSMEs quickly reoriented themselves. Many of the responsive MSMEs quickly reoriented themselves to provide, to manufacture the masks and gloves and what is required during the COVID. So I think that was something that was done as an immediate response measure from both ends. But otherwise, we can see global supply chains picked up post the second phase of COVID. The supply chains have revived. But that is why there is this whole emphasis on an Atmanirbhar model wherein we cater to domestic demand. And so therefore, we need to work further on making our MSMEs cater to a demand which is very local and which is around, not very far away from the centers of production. So I think that will actually ring fence them from all kinds of global supply shocks and even national supply shocks.
Okay, but Ms. Vinita, and if we compare Indian policy during the lockdown or during that 2021 vis-a-vis the other policies of other countries like UK or USA, here the government of India is providing facilities to MSMEs and other sectors, while abroad they are giving direct benefit to the customers, the consumers, or the public at large. And that's why the demand was not going down. Rather, because of that, the MSMEs of those countries were working day and night, because the people who are getting the money and their expenses have gone down drastically because they are not going out, no extra expenditures, and they were doing work from home. So all those factors were there. What you say about those two policies? One is where the amount is going directly to the consumer. The other is to give the facilities or credit facilities or other benefits to the industry, not directly to the consumer directly. So do you think this model or this planning is better, policy is better than the policy adopted by UK and USA? What you say about this, Ms. Vinita?
Sure. So I think we had all kinds of measures undertaken by the government of India, not only for the MSMEs, but we also had a lot of benefits being directly transferred to various below poverty line, population of the country. Especially if you see the 𝐂𝐑𝐔 𝐍𝐄𝐖𝐒 Yojna and various other packages that were announced by the Prime Minister, which was directly transferred to the accounts of the beneficiaries, be it farmers or be it the poorer sections of the population. So during COVID, we had a lot of infusion going directly into the accounts of the beneficiaries as well. So I think we did both a two-pronged, three-pronged approach during COVID. And I think it was a remarkably well-balanced package that was designed by the government, taking care of all aspects without actually being, without actually making it seem like a very charitable initiative, because a lot of loans were given to MSMEs thinking that they would, come out of this crisis sooner than later and they would be able to repay their loans. Because like I always say, and it's always famously said that you should not be in business if you don't know how to do business. So therefore, if you're doing business, you should be able to repay the loans that you take. And it's not about getting subsidies. You cannot run a business based on a subsidy or a toll from the government. So that is the philosophy to make our enterprises self-sufficient. So that is the entire philosophy of this government itself in making an enterprise economy and making the population self-reliant and not really rely on subsidies and welfare measures of the government of India.
But Ms. Vinita, the perception is that because of the lockdown, the demand has gone down, and that's why they have to close their units. And what they can do with your credit facilities or those things, because if there is no demand, so the question is, when there is a demand and supply proposition, if the demand is down, then definitely the supply has to go down. So what they say is generally that the MSMEs could not work during the lockdown because of there was no demand, and demand can be created only when the money is there in the hands of the consumer. So don't you think that if we would have given not only below the poverty line, because I have seen many of the school teachers, many of other workers who were working, but they have lost even their salaries were not paid to them, and they were almost hand to mouth. So they were saying that what we can do, we cannot buy anything. We have to first see how we will serve our own family. And you mentioned about if you do not know the business, you should not be in the business. What the businessman can do if their lockdown has been announced by the government? Ms. Vinita.
Yeah, no. So what I meant was that when they give out loans, they can repay it at a later date. So not during COVID, but later date. They are assume that they will pick up their business and they will have the aspiration to grow. At least in order to repay their loans, they would have to reach a certain level of profit and certain level of income. So that is the incentive for providing loans rather than subsidies, is what I said. And the second point about giving the consumers direct benefit apart from below poverty line, if you recall, we also had a lot of measures taken by the finance minister to the public sector employees to increase their bonuses during Diwali, etc. There was a lot of measures done to increase the salaries and liquidity. In fact, actually, liquidity was higher during COVID, is what we have seen projections, because there was a lot of saving and there was not a lot of expenditure had reduced considerably because people were not hiring vehicles to go to offices, and so much of expenditure was reduced. If on a personal level also we have experienced the kind of savings that we've had during COVID. So I think on the contrary, there was also immense liquidity also in the market. If you're talking about the middle income population, I think a lot of the employees in the government sector and the other public sector employees, etc., had a lot of liquidity in their hands. And apart from that, I think the private sector also, the large corporates, have given a lot of benefits to the employees during COVID. We've heard a lot of best practices and good stories coming out of the corporate sector, where they actually help the employees to cope up with this crisis. We've heard a lot of good measures taken by employees like Tata's and etc., where they've actually given allowances to help the employees cope up during this crisis.
That's true, but what about the medium and small and micro businessmen when they shut down their unit and the employees have been asked to stay at home without salary? I'm like many sectors. I am doing this media conference. I found that even the teachers, schools, many other sectors, they says we are not getting any salary and we cannot beg from anyone, and no one is talking about us. Don't you think the government should also consider the private? Because government sectors, we can understand that they are getting their salaries on time. But here in private sector, we are talking of micro and small enterprises. They are not giving the salary. They are not either, or they are giving very reduced salary because there is no income from their own organization. So don't you think the government should try to benefit them, those small, or the traders, small shop owner whose income is coming from the shop every day, or even the labor class, the migrants? So we have seen the crisis during the first pandemic, not the first wave, not the second wave. So don't you think that if the government would give something to the small or micro and small traders or their employees directly, like in UK, they have given that if you cannot run your unit, then 80% of the salary will be borne by the government, and then those units who wanted to work, when they found that the 80% salary is coming from the government, so they started working. Don't you think such type of some changes we require? Because now third wave is knocking, and slowly we are entering in the lockdown phase again. Night curfews are there. Many places, even after 5 p.m., everything is closed. So one can imagine the business, the income or the collection is going to reduce because you will have limited hours to do the business. So in that aspect, government has to make a long-term plan for such type of pandemics, which is happening now very frequently, so that at least people can stay without any financial hardship. What do you say about this?
No, absolutely. So one is, of course, the kind of policies that UK or Germany has taken towards their countries. They are definitely laudable and good policies, but at the same time, we can't just replicate those policies in our country because the complexity of our country and the scale of our country is so huge. It's one of the largest, the subcontinents in the world. So, and with huge diversities and challenging terrains in every state. So therefore, what the central government can do cannot be like a UK model, because UK model perhaps can be replicated by one state in India. A particular state can perhaps adopt such friendly policies. But at the national government, at the federal government level, I think this was a good policy in terms of giving out liquidity to the MSMEs, in terms of giving out the automatic emergency credit lines and the COVID support, all the collateral-free loans that were given, and of course the subsidy program still run, the Prime Minister's Employment Guarantee Program, wherein subsidy is given for new enterprises. Doing extremely well is what I see from the ground. I've just come to Kerala to do site visit on on MSMEs and how the food processing enterprises are working here, and I see a lot of response to the PMEGP program by the MSMEs. A lot of subsidy has been taken up through the PMEGP program the last 2 years during COVID. So I think it's the government has not really supported during this time. And if you talk about certain private players not giving out salaries, I think that was a panic reaction by these certain private operators that you're talking about. But I mentioned large corporates giving out very good support systems to their employees, whereas the smaller private sector operators perhaps have not been able to follow suit, because there was a panic reaction and they were assuming that perhaps it would be a doomsday scenario and we will never come out of this. But I think now, going from here, as you mentioned about third wave and the Omicron attacks, etc., now going from here, we should not see such rigid lockdowns that we saw in the first phase, and we should perhaps now learn to live with this virus, and we should not have such extreme measures of lockdowns and curfews that actually impact the essential services. And perhaps if government may consider as declaring MSMEs also under essential services, then maybe things will improve.
Yes, and you rightly said that if one state can replicate the model of UK, so if all the states decide to replicate themselves, then the things can be changed. But they require financial freedom from the central government. That is, they always cry, but that is their internal matter. We would not like to go venture in that right now. Secondly, I want to read to you something about the business pause. A survey of 500 MSMEs in June last year, that is 2021, conducted by IT solutions firm Endurance International Group, said 1/3 of the respondents had halted their business activities temporarily and expected to stay shut for at least 6 months. Many businesses shut down permanently. What do you want to say about that?
Yes, so the IT, it's about the IT sector particularly, or the study done by IT solutions?
No, this study done by the IT firm, okay. not for it's on the MSMEs.
Sure. So yeah, as I said, we've just reflected upon the scenario that we went through the last 2 years. The first year was tremendously difficult because of immediate emergency measures of stringent lockdowns. While the government learned thereafter and learned to kind of cope up with this pandemic attacks, and how we could actually maneuver around this pandemic, and how we could actually continue essential services during the pandemic as well. And so during, I think, the first phase, or between the first and the second phase, a lot of companies actually saw shutting down happen.
Okay, so but when they have shut down, the things work around again. When they shut down, definitely they have stopped paying the payment to the workers. And that is the crisis started. See, the problem is if MSME close down anywhere, they are not big corporates, so they can use their reserves for giving the wages and salaries. And a chain has stopped because the MSME is not creating something without using the raw materials, etc. As MSME is also depending on the big corporates. When big corporates orders have stopped, then MSME is already in the verge of shutdown. And when they are on the verge of shutdown or they shut down, they stop the payments to the suppliers as well as for the workers. So the entire chain, and that's why the financial crisis, which we have seen in last year or after the first wave and the second wave, do you think government is planning to do something that, in case, let's hope for the best that no third wave should be that severe, but whatsoever the indications are coming that it is going to be spreading very fast, definitely it's not going to have that much mortality, but still if it will spread fast, and if the hospitalization, what the estimate yesterday, some media house has predicted, or somebody has predicted, expert, that 90,000 every day the admissions will be there, and if 5 days admission minimum average will be, so it will be about one can imagine 4.5 lakhs, 5 lakhs beds, while we have about 1 lakh beds available in India. So again the crisis may come in that aspect, because unfortunately in India, in spite of government's best efforts, people are still reluctant to take the vaccination. They have not gone for the second vaccination, who has taken the first vaccination. And the researches are coming that those who are vaccinated, both the vaccinations or in other countries, even the booster dose, there the severity is very, very less. No hospitalization is required. While those who are unvaccinated, they may go for the hospitalization. That is a very point here. So my point is, when this is the situation, and God forbids if the same situation of the 2021 will repeat in 2022, what further plans the government have? Because last 2 years government has given lots of credit to the MSMEs. Are they going to plan to have another credit facilities to MSME, or they will put a pause button and they will say now it's up to the traders or the MSME?
No, absolutely not. So 3-4 points. One is, of course, about the second or third wave that is going to hit us. So I think, what we should perhaps as a policy maker, what I can respond to this is that we should have the health sector actually reinforcing their efforts to see that the construction industry or the MSME service, the manufacturing sector does not get impacted. And so we see a lot of preventive measures being rolled out on a large scale, on a mission mode across the country. Even before we wait for the Omicron to peak, we should be able to equip ourselves with all the essential equipments, and like the gears and the masks and the PPE kits, and so maybe make it very essential that for essential services, people should come to the workplaces with such uniforms in place. So I think preventive measures and a lot of sanitization and hygiene measures to be adopted by all MSMEs and all such service sectors and manufacturing sector enterprises. And I think we should not have a complete lockdown anymore. And we should see that at least certain sectors like the construction industry and the MSME manufacturing and service sector, of course, can still opt for work from home. Wherever it's possible for work from home, people should work from home. I think that's a good policy to adopt for emergency situations. And I think the government should be flexible about this. That is something also which I would like to state here, is that the bureaucrats and the bureaucracy these it's not required. They can also sit at home and they can function through e-offices. So that should be allowed. That flexibility should come into the governmental systems of good, because we see private sectors like Google and all of that, they've declared work from home for forever, permanently. So I think that we should have that kind of a broad approach being adopted by the government sector as well. So I think, so those were the points that I wanted to make in this regard. And we'll see also, definitely, we won't see a stop to the kind of budget announcements that will happen. We'll see a new budget coming in very soon. In February, we'll have the pre-budget session, and we will see definitely a lot of announcements for the health sector and for the MSMEs, as well as for, emergency credit responses if required.
Okay. Now, again, I will give some data. The revenue drop. In a survey of 14,444 MSMEs in May last year, half the respondents reported a 20 to 50% drop in earnings. Restrictions were gradually lifted and economic activities resumed in the second half of 2020, but revenues remained mute. The trend continues in 2021. Now, what you say about this? Because this survey was conducted on May 2021. No, we can't hear. You are on mute. Please unmute. Please unmute. Please unmute. Yeah, no. You have to unmute, please. Please unmute.
Yeah,
Yes.
so sorry. Yeah, so sorry for this. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So the survey, was it done on a sample size or was it done across the country?
It was done for 14,444 MSMEs.
So it's a sample survey. So perhaps it is also reflecting on those MSMEs which have the smaller ones. Of course, we're talking about micro only. So many of them, yeah, definitely they did shut down, like we mentioned in the last conversation, that there were some measures taken. So I think going from here to have a policy declared by or an announcement by the Prime Minister that from now onwards we would not see any company or anything, he should ensure that supply chains are in place. Like I mentioned, certain emergency services or essential services, we should declare our MSMEs, the construction industry and the supply chain logistics sector as essential services. Even the night the trucks, lorries and the supply chain that is happening during the night, we should not stop them functioning in the night.
Okay. Now we have seen during the this 2021 cash flow crunch was there. The resultant liquidity crunch made it difficult for MSMEs to repay loans and pay salaries, because whatsoever credit was given, then they have to repay also. As you mentioned that when they are doing business, they should know how to do business. But many had to lay off employees and vacate their office because of the rent. In UK, again, I'm talking about the UK. The government of UK has started paying the rent also to those MSMEs who want to work during the pandemic, during the lockdown. So is the government of India is having any plan? Because now, in case, as you are saying that you are going to declare the many essential services or MSMEs can work, but when they will not get the revenue which they can to serve themselves profitably or even on break even, then definitely their problem is the rent and the wages. So what you say about that?
Yeah, so these emergency credit responses that were given, that was for working capital. That is all for towards rent and towards wages of employees. So it's up to the MSME to see how they use it, because they, many of them would have perhaps just kept it in the bank accounts to save it for a later day, like panic reactions, So they found it easier to lay off employees but I've seen many generous employees like small micro enterprises also who had a heart. They said that they would if the owner said that the owner would take it on himself. If he is in the red, it doesn't matter to him, but he would not let his employees suffer. So he saw to it that during the pandemic all his employees got their salaries. So it's about a mindset, it's about the attitude. I think so, for many of the MSMEs. So we cannot blame the government for everything that a citizen or a particular MSME does.
Okay. Now, when we talk about import and export, exports fell by a record 60% and imports by 59% in April 2021. After a slow revival, December data showed exports down by marginal 0.80% year on year and imports up 7.6% year on year. But it is too early to cheer. The Economic Survey 2021 report card of India's financial health in 2020-2021 predicts exports will contract by 5.8%, imports by 11.3% in the second half of the current financial year, which is right now. So what do you say about that?
No, definitely. Yeah, we saw exports getting negatively impacted during the COVID, and imports also getting impacted. Like we said, global supply chains were impacted. So, and we've seen other countries actually suffering more during the COVID, and reacting very sharply and shutting down borders, etc. So, I think that way definitely on the international trade scenario, there has been a negative impact of the pandemic. But that is why this policy of the Atmanirbhar Bharat and also many other countries adopting this policy of improving domestic production and domestic supply chains and local supply chains, So like something called a local economic development, which is a global phenomenon, which is picking up across the globe, which is about actually making every local body self-sufficient in themselves in terms of not just basic amenities and social amenities, but also economically making them self-sufficient to such an extent that they also cater to predominantly their local population within a range of say 10 to 15 kilometers. So if this model is adopted in the long term, we would be able to survive a lot of pandemics and a lot of such global shocks that the world is witnessing.
Okay. Now I will give another survey. This is done by MSMEs, a survey of 150 MSMEs in India by consulting firm MSMEs on last Tuesday. Said that more than 70% respondents suffered a debilitating impact of the second COVID wave, while 50% claimed that the government schemes and incentives did not help them to sustain through the pandemic. Moreover, close to 43% also noted that they had changed their business model to survive the pandemic. Further, 50% respondents also said they were yet to fully recover from the impact of the first and second waves. Consequent to the impact, 56% were forced to adopt digital marketing and payments, while 35% said they had to take external financial support for their ventures. Your comments, please.
Yes, so this data that you're quoting, they are all perhaps true, and of course they should be true if it is being quoted. But the point is that about such the negative stories, of course, we have heard during the pandemic. But like you said, in terms of micromanaging, the government of India cannot really micromanage and see as to what each and every MSME is doing. So in terms of their response and their response measures, I think at a federal level, what is best has been done. But what more can be done is perhaps looking at the smaller, very, very fledgling MSMEs, the micro, nano enterprises, and maybe those are the stories that you are quoting. So perhaps the government can consider doing something for the nano enterprises and for the unorganized sector. Of course, the government has come out with a lot of programs for the unorganized sector also. Never before have we seen so much of formalization efforts happening, because till today, till the last so many years, decades, we've seen more than 90% of our workforce is from the informal sector. The labor sector is informal. But now we see a drive through the eShram portal and to formalize these laborers, and so that they would be gig and platform workers and manual laborers and daily wage laborers will be now brought onto the formal networks so that they would access social security benefits. So I think that's a great move by the government of India. And so with such moves, I think through formalization of these laborers and also maybe something more that the government can do is towards the nano enterprises, and maybe also if required we can issue advisories for the functioning of these MSMEs during COVID. We saw one of the phases, we saw the Prime Minister giving strict instructions to all employers to not to cut the salaries of the employees. So something like that, if the advisory can go from or an announcement can go from the PM, I think that would really have an impact.
Okay. Now I will talk about the Mudra Yojna, which the government has given for the MSMEs. The average sanctioned loans under Mudra Yojna comes at rupees 46,530, while that of disbursed amount of rupees 45,034. This amount could not be considered enough to launch a startup that could provide jobs to others. This amount is also much lower than the average per capita income of Indians, that is 1.11 lakh for 2017-18, according to advanced estimates of the Central Statistics Organization, CSO. Your comments, please.
So this Mudra loan is for for helping enterprises to set up enterprises. So this is the the sentiment of anybody. If you start getting subsidies, then you want the government to help you to do everything. So that's not possible. You can't really ask the government to do your work for what you have to do. So some portion would come from the government, and some portion would come from the beneficiary, and some portion will have to come from the state government. So that is how a stakeholder system works on a win-win partnership model. And we can't expect the central government to actually handhold from 0 to 100 for any enterprise. So it can only be hand-holding support. In any case, the role of a government in general is to be a facilitator and not to be an implementer. The government of India's role is to be a regulator and a facilitator as per policy. But we still haven't got to that stage because India is still a country which is still growing. Therefore, the population and various sectors need support. Therefore, the government is doing more than what it has to be, what it has to do.
Okay. Now, in the case of MSMEs, there is a huge problem with the liquidity crunch, and it has worsened in the current COVID-19 situation. Being a supplier to large firms, the majority of MSMEs are dependent on the success of large firms as well as credit payments from these firms. Delays in payments from large firms or stoppages of operations from large firms reduce cash flow to MSME, leading to liquidity issues. MSME usually face the problems of bad debt or late repayment from debtors, as they do not comprise suitable recovery mechanisms that eventually affect their working capital availability. Now, the current COVID-19 pandemic has hit industry hard, as lockdown leads to stoppage of operation, resulting in stoppage of cash inflow to the firm. This has intensely impacted the availability of liquid funds to the businesses. Most MSMEs experience unavailability of timely capital and suffer from either shrinking of operations or liquefying the enterprise itself. Your comments, please.
No, absolutely. It is well recognized and taken cognizance of this issue of delayed payments. It's again, not the federal government, but the players that are doing this, the buyers and the sellers, it's between them. But still, the government has intervened to a large extent. And since I'm there, I know what is being done by the government of India. So there is something called a trade receivables electronic discount system, a TREDS platform, which the MSME ministry and the government of India has made, which is an online platform where both the parties have to register themselves, the buyer and the seller, so that there is naming and shaming of all these buyers who don't pay the MSMEs on time. Definitely, I think this is a very, very it is a very negative thing that the buyers are doing, and the punitive action has to be taken against those who don't pay the MSMEs on time. Delayed payment is something which has to be taken very seriously, and it is being taken very seriously. There are these MSEFCs, MSE facilitation councils also, which are already set up in all 32 states and also union territories, wherein the MSMEs can go and do a redressal of their grievances against the buyers. So, then there is also this, move towards bringing in online dispute resolution mechanisms by the government of India, especially keeping in view the current the COVID pandemic situation that we have all been going through the last 2 years. So we're moving towards online courts and online dispute resolution mechanisms, which will be integrated with the Samadhan portal of the Ministry of MSME. Samadhan is again a portal for the dispute between buyers and sellers. And so it's also been made mandatory for the PSUs also to register onto the TREDS platform. So there's no escape for the PSUs as well. So this is going to be taken very strictly and is being taken very strictly by the government for against delayed payments to MSMEs.
Now, you have mentioned that strict action to be taken against those who are not making payment. Now I am telling you something, and I want your straight answer for that. The Finance Ministry on Monday, the last, had said that more than 75,000 crore rupees worth dues were paid by government departments and central public sector units to MSMEs between June 2020 to October 2021 period. However, this was only 15% of the rupees 5 lakh crores in outstanding dues owed to MSMEs by the central and state departments and private sectors as well. According to a PTI report, former MSME Minister Mr. Nitin Gadkari in an online event of Calcutta Chamber of Commerce in May last year had said that the state governments, their ministries and public sector undertakings, the government of India, its ministries and undertakings and major industries combined owed an amount estimated rupees 5 lakhs crores to MSMEs. Now, when the government, central government, their PSUs, state governments, when they are in default, they are not making payment, how you expect the other business houses can make on time if the government is not making payment? What you say about this, Ms. Vinita?
Which is what I just spoke about the PSU giving delayed payments. So for which we have also made it mandatory that the PSUs also have to register themselves on the TREDS platform. And I think now, as you mentioned about the outstanding dues, so those are backlogs before this, mandatory regulations came in place. So it will take some time for the backlog to clear. But I think still there has to be a lot of, a lot of strict action and also strict instructions given to the PSUs to ensure that timely payments and they clear their backlogs immediately and timely payments are made to MSMEs. So probably as a result of this conference also, maybe we could also sound the government of India and the Ministry of MSME to, of course, there are advisories and there are letters being issued continuously to the PSUs and the large buyers. But I think this has to be a reminder call for them to actually see to it that immediately all the delayed payments are resolved.
Okay. Now, we have seen the trend in last year as well as 2020 and 2021 especially, that the gainer are big corporates. And you can see through the stock exchange also, otherwise also, but the MSMEs suffered loss. Why there was so much disparity? Why there is so much difference between the big corporates are earning money, lots of money during the pandemic, while the MSMEs suffered? Don't you think the government should come out with some scheme which will bridge this big gap? Otherwise, what will happen? The big corporates will become bigger and bigger and MSMEs will shrink to a nano enterprise. What do you say about this, Ms. Vinita?
Yeah, so I think this difference between big corporates and small enterprises will remain, be it pandemic or non-pandemic situation. So we are still a country with a high Gini coefficient, and the discrepancies between rich and poor still exist. But I think the government, as I repeatedly have been saying, that we've done all measures to ensure liquidity to MSMEs, and it has to be noted that these MSMEs that we're talking about, which the government is supporting, more than 90% of these MSMEs are micro enterprises. So they are really the small enterprises that the government is actually supporting, and not the medium and the small enterprises. The small and medium enterprises are not coming to the government for subsidies. And as per definition, also more than 90% of our MSMEs are micro enterprises. So the government is actually hand-holding the have-nots and not the haves, and the big corporates are not really being supported by the government. And of course, big corporates have deep pockets and they have liquidities to help them support through a crisis. That is why they are big corporates. And so I think there could also be, there's an idea that comes to me instantly is that perhaps we could have a program wherein the big corporates actually handhold smaller micro enterprises and medium enterprises, small enterprises to how to run a business. And I think that's definitely being done by a lot of pockets in the private domain. But if there can be a governmental effort or a mission to actually see that the big corporates actually handhold these smaller corporates, smaller enterprises, I think that would be a good idea. We still are seeing a lot of efforts in that. We have seen Google giving a huge amount recently towards COVID-affected MSMEs also.
Now you mentioned about that how the big corporates are helping. The one which main factor is facing the trouble faced by the MSMEs are the upgradation in technology, and the technology remains a major deterrent for them. Is Government of India is planning to do some thing to upgrade them, to make them trained, so that the training can be imparted to MSMEs, so that they can use those technology, as you mentioned that the few of the MSMEs turn for manufacturing masks or hand sanitizers, etc. But there are lots of other things which were not been taken by MSMEs in a big way, which would have been done. So do you think the government or is having any plans to upgrade the technology for the MSMEs so that they can sustain during such type of crisis?
Yeah, so definitely we are having a lot of trainings being undertaken by the ministry as well on making these MSMEs come onto the digital platform, and also to help them use latest industry 4.0 technologies such as artificial intelligence systems, etc. So there is a lot of training going on in making these MSMEs state of the art and exposing them to the latest technologies which will help them cope up with such crisis situations. So I think this effort is ongoing. And as far as technology upgradation is concerned, there are schemes run by the ministry as well. One is, of course, the Prime Minister's Employment Guarantee Program, which everybody is aware of, where subsidy is given for new enterprises for procuring equipments and procuring machinery, plant machinery. And apart from that, there is also a program called TUS, Technology Upgradation Scheme, which is actually about exposing the MSMEs to the various, productivity enhancing technologies from Japan, etc. Like it's called the Lean program, the Z program, Zero Effect, Zero Defect program. Such programs are also being, run by the Government of India, where the Government of India is actually giving subsidies to hire consultants. Consultants can be hired by MSMEs, and the government is subsidizing the fees of those last mile consultants. And the government is also giving a lot of incentives for MSMEs to register themselves as into these platforms, which is the Zero Effect, Zero Defect platforms, as well as to make them lean, etc. So there are a lot of efforts going on in technology upgradation, and government is also taking the help of World Bank to help them through this technology upgradation schemes of MSMEs.
Okay, when you talk about the technology upgradation, the problem which MSMEs faced is about the financial planning, because they are used to do their work in normal conditions, but in such type of emergency conditions, they never had a plan of contingencies, and their financial everything has gone haywire. So is government is also planning to give them the training or give them some expertise or give them so that at least they should know how to plan their finances in such type of crisis in future or even the present time?
Yes, so a part of this, the consulting that is happening at the ground level is not just for technology upgradation, but also for helping the MSMEs prepare their financial plans. So this particular World Bank support that I'm talking about is also about providing support to the MSMEs at the last mile to help them prepare their books of accounts And so particular trainings are designed for helping MSMEs to prepare books of accounts and do their financial planning, and to help them submit their loans, the proposals, applications to the banks. So that is also being done by the government of India, not only by the MSME ministry, but also by the food processing ministry. There is this concept of district resource persons, which is like resource persons.
Okay, I think we have lost the connection with our chief guest, Ms. Vinita Hariharan. As viewers, she has mentioned that she's traveling and she has to go for a special meeting, but she was giving the answers, the questions which I am asking. I'm sure she will be joining again soon. I will try. But what she has mentioned very clearly was about how the government of India is doing their best to bail out the MSMEs, because everybody knows about the MSME. I think now she is there. So, Ms. Vinita, we have lost you. I think, but now you are again there. So, so you were saying something. We lost. We were talking about the lack of financial expertise with MSME. Yes, Ms. Vinita, please.
So what I was mentioning is that, for the financial planning of these MSMEs, there are these last mile consultants for which the government of India is also subsidizing the fees of these last mile consultants, who would go to the MSMEs and handhold them to prepare their financial plans and books of accounts, so that they can submit their applications to the banks and help them to bridge that gap which they have in preparing books of accounts and preparing balance sheets, etc.
Okay. Now, the main thing which again comes, because we have seen in 2020 the migrants issue very badly. And fortunately, we have not seen in the last year that much, because everyone was aware. But is government of India is having a permanent solutions for the laborers or the migrants, so that in such type of emergency, they will not have any crisis, and especially for MSMEs, not the big corporates, although the big corporates also failed in 2020. But now the 2021 big corporates have tried their best. So is there any plan for the MSME or not? In the government is having any plan for the migrants?
Like I mentioned about the migrant laborers, there are these efforts taken by the government of India. A lot of efforts were taken actually after the crisis of 2020. A lot of efforts were taken to redress the grievances of the labor sector, and one was, of course, long-term measures. One is, of course, making the codes into one, all the 25 acts into 4 codes, to simplify the process of setting up businesses in India. So that labor reform has happened. There is also this move to bring in parity of wages across the country. Like we see very low wages in daily wages in Odisha and very high wages in Kerala. So which sees a lot of these migrants coming to Kerala and working here as daily wage laborers from states like the so-called Bimaru states of Bihar and Odisha, etc. So there should not be a situation where a Bihari cannot work in Bihar. So therefore, government is working towards bringing in parity in wages across the country. That is the second step. The third step is, of course, registering all the laborers into portals and to the Government of India database, So this is not just making a database of laborers, but also to help them in the long run or in the short run as well, to get benefits from the government, social security benefits like EPFO, etc. That is also being done. And the last was the latest attempt is the eShram portal, where the laborers can register themselves at the eShram portal, gig and platform workers, as well as domestic workers like our maid servants and all of them, the drivers, etc., can also register themselves on the eShram portal, and which will help them avail of various benefits given by the government of India.
Okay, and as our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned about the vocal for local, is MSME or the government is having any plans to start such type of industries locally, so that the migrants need not to go to the big cities if they will get the job employment? And as you mentioned that the disparity in the wages will be not there, if they will get the almost similar wages or somewhat less, because the expenses in big cities are far more than the small cities or their own native place, so then they need not to go, and then they can work, and then the MSMEs can be developed, or the cluster will be developed in those areas where those migrants, laborers who used to go will not go, and they will work there only. Is there any such type of plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what the whole Atmanirbhar package, the Atmanirbhar program of the government is about, vocal for local, which is actually about promoting one district in every, one product in every district. You must have heard of the ODOP scheme of the government of India. So Uttar Pradesh has taken the lead in this, wherein every district has identified one product. And there's a lot of effort going into bring in investments to actually take this product, this particular product, be it a food product, like it could be a pineapple, it could be mango, it could be rice, it could be anything, it could be tapioca, coconut. So all of this is a resource that is grown locally. You know, one has to identify a resource that is grown locally, and also perhaps handicraft, handlooms. So, and then the next step is to bring in investments, you know, from other countries, like maybe our NRIs who are settled across the world. We invite them to come to these various states and invest in these local resources. Maybe they belong to that particular village, so they can come and invest in their own village, and gives them the pride of contributing back to their village. And then they hone up this product and take the product through its value chain and build it into an enterprise. And this enterprise then hires local population, giving employment locally. This is the concept of the local economic development also that is happening across the globe. Many countries have risen out of poverty just by following this model. If I can take the example of China, actually, they've actually risen out of poverty using this model of build your own backyard. So, so this is the vocal for local, concept, and the government is driving this on a mission mode. And we have in the food processing sector, in the Ministry of Food Processing, runs a scheme called PMFME, which is Prime Minister's formalization of micro enterprises, which is all about giving emphasis to ODOPs and food ODOPs in every district, which has been recognized by the MSME. And the products would be all the FPOs and the self-help groups that engage in production of this particular product would be provided a lot of subsidies and loans by the government of India.
When you are talking about the local for vocal, vocal for local, we are, why the government is, although the government is taking lead now for the some tourism spots, but still in India we have so many, we are diverse country, and so many spots are there where everyone can visit, whether it's for the purely entertainment or having some pilgrimage or something like that. But still it is not. I will tell you the example. I went to Hawaii, and there they took a tour, and there they were showing how to take out the coconut from the shell, which is a very common thing in India, all in Kerala and Karnataka and all those coastal areas. It's a very common thing. And they were saying, they were asking, do you know there are 3 eyes in the coconut? And many of them were not aware, but they are charging for that. Is the government is having such plan? Another, again, I will give you an example. Like we have building stadiums. all stadiums abroad, like in UK, Lord's Stadium, we have now the new movie has come, 83 people are watching on this. But Lord's Stadium is also, there is a tour where there everyone can go, pay 20 pounds, and they can have a tour, and the tour is full, except during the matches are played, except that otherwise around the year they are doing that conducted tour for half an hour, where they are even allowing the visitor to go in the dressing room of the stadium, and even on that gallery where our famous Saurav Ganguly waved his shirt. Now, my point is, we have so many stadiums, we have so many things. Even the Manchester United in Manchester, they have their stadium, and that is also, there is a tour. So many souvenirs they are selling. Is the government is planning to start such type of thing which will definitely earn money? I think we have lost you again, Miss Vinita. We have lost her. No, we are there. So is government is having such type of plan to promote such type of small portions, but which will be self-dependent, and it can earn good amount for the country. What your views, please?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like who all of us who've traveled abroad, we can see the kind of interesting and varied kind of innovative, creative efforts taken by them to promote tourism. Even a neighboring country like Sri Lanka is doing remarkably in terms of packaging the tea products and the local products. So I think that we need to really work on that along with the private players, and we need to have public-private partnerships in place for tourism. And like the vocal for local, what I was talking about, tourism is also an integral part of this, wherein we recognize tourist spots in every local area and build around those spots and give employment to local people, in the service sector related to that tourism, tourism activity that we've identified in every district or every block. But yeah, like the focus of the government the last 2 years has been on the redressal of the pandemic, which has actually hit all governments by shock, and therefore tourism was not a priority sector during this. During the last 2 years, but definitely we saw a lot of announcements the last budget also in terms of providing benefits to the tourism sector, providing again credit-free loans to the tourism sector. So I think that government is doing, but now to the post-pandemic, we can see a lot of these revival efforts towards tourism going to take place, because every budget is about prioritization, and we have a limited budget available with the government of India.
One more scheme which is very much prevailing in USA and UK and other countries is the outlet malls. But it cannot be successful without the active support of the government. The idea is that in all the, like you are mentioning about the clusters you are making for one product, if you will have outlet malls away from the metros for about 70, 80 or 100 kilometers away right now, like if we will take a case of Delhi, so about 100 kilometers away from Delhi, a place like Kosi or some on all the outskirts of Delhi, one side from going towards Karnal, the other side going toward Rajasthan, third side going toward UP. We will have outlet malls where the manufacturers, all types of manufacturers, branded products will be sold there. Only thing is that there is no taxation on that by the government, whether it's a VAT or anything, whether GST, etc. And the manufacturers will also give a discount. So the products will be between 50 to 70% discount of the branded products. The advantage is that all the employees of those areas or those outlet mall will be from the local areas. And the people coming from like Delhi going to 100 kilometers away, because if they know that they are going to get the product cheaper, they will go there and they will spend the time there. The hotel industries will develop there, the restaurants will develop there. So it will become an entire small pocket of the city, and it will generate lots of revenue, other revenues Yes, in the outlet mall, it is totally free. Has any such type of things government of India has thought about it? Because when we are developing, as our Prime Minister wants very much about the vocal for local, we have to see to it that we have to create the employment then and there. We have to raise their lifestyle, and that is only possible if we will develop such type of small things. It is very popular. Even I have seen in a place called Vermont in USA, which is a very small hill station. It's like a dead hill station, but it has become a very vibrant, because they have created the entire city a duty-free area. Once it is a duty-free, but there is no restriction like in India. We have Goa, where the liquor is selling very cheap. But if you bring from Goa to any other state, you are going to be caught. So in case if the government will ban in such a way that all states will have such types of outlets, but not in metros, away, so that the locals will get the benefit. What do you say about this, Ms. Vinita?
Yeah, like I said, this is a very good concept. We had the Reliance and the other, chains of retail chains doing such malls across the country in the outlying areas. We had huge hypermarkets being built, and I think now they are in place. So these hypermarkets actually gave employment to the local population around in the outskirts. So not only an outlet mall, I think even if we open an educational institution in remote areas, we have a lot of local economy being generated through such educational institutions, etc. So, but like I said, we can't expect the government to do everything. Retail is something which is largely a private sector driven enterprise. What the government can do is perhaps facilitate or invite such large retail players to start constructing these hypermarkets again in the outlying areas. But I think we have seen a lot of momentum already in that direction in our country. We have huge malls in the outlying areas that have been constructed. But another danger of such malls is also, if they become like in China, we had so many malls being constructed, and they are these ghost malls and ghost towns being, constructed in large outskirts. So I think that's another danger that we need to be prepared against, and we strengthen ourselves against such issues also, because a proper feasibility study has to be done before setting up such malls in outlying areas.
But I am sure that under your leadership, such type of studies can be done. But why I'm saying the government has to proactive, because the government has to waive off the tax. If they will waive off the tax, then only the manufacturer would like to sell the product there, and definitely their profit ratio will be less, and turnover will be more. Advantage will be that the local people will get the job then and there only. Now I am coming to a very recent thing, which is applicable from 1st of January, although it was announced last year only. The service tax on food delivery services, like our Zomato and Swiggy, etc. I'm not talking about them. If they have to pay, they have to pay. I'm talking about the small kitchens, which comes under MSMEs, very, very small, even nano kitchens. A housewife, a house lady is running a kitchen at home, making biryani or something, and selling, giving and selling something and earning some. But now with this tax, which has been labeled on the Zomato, etc., although it will not be, those small nano kitchens will not be taxed, but the problem is their formalities, because they had to take the GST number and they have to file the returns. And today, to obtain a GST number is not easy. To file a return of GST is not easy, especially for those small, very, very small kitchens or housewives, etc. I think we have again lost you, Ms. Vinita. Are you there?
I'm sure you can.
Yeah. So, Ms. Vinita,
can you not see?
I want your views about this.
No, absolutely. So, so this nano kitchen concept. When you see this, aggregators are being actually taxed, like aggregators like Zomato and Amazon and all of these e-commerce players, because see, they are actually they've gained a lot during this pandemic times. They've gained profits a lot because those were the industries that were really thriving during the COVID times. So why should we not bring them under the tax net, and why should they not contribute to the nation building process? Because they are actually, I wouldn't say they're making money out of a COVID situation, but they were doing well during COVID, and because they were providing essential services. So why not bring them under the tax net? But as you said, because of that, the supply chain, the smaller vendors also would have to come under the GST net. So I think for that, perhaps, we should see players like Zomato or the bigger players actually hand-holding the smaller players, whoever comes under their umbrella, giving them training on how to get into the GST platform. And perhaps they should actually, like big brothers, handhold these smaller players to come under the GST. But of course, notwithstanding that, the government also has to do its bit on sprucing up the training towards GST. And I think much more training and hand-holding needs to be done for bringing the enterprises onto the GST platform. But the government is doing to a large extent, but some more efforts can be done. And there is also this whole theory that GST is very tough, but it's actually not so tough to come under a GST platform. And we also see a lot of these balancing off happening, right? So no one actually pays GST. The end player pays it, but there is a squaring off that happens along the value chain. So isn't it, if input credit and all of that is taken into account, so one doesn't really suffer so much when one pays GST. But then in the end, the government actually benefits, and once the government benefits, all of these money is going to go back into welfare measures for the citizens.
No, you are right that the government should get the money. There is no doubt about it. My worry is only about, is it possible that the GST will be paid by which they have to pay all the big aggregator payers, but those small kitchens or the nano kitchens, their turnover is less than 20 lakhs, need not to go for registration. Earlier it was exempted, but now because of this, and as you said, the hand holding, very well, these big players are like sharks. They never want to handhold. They will say, but they will not do. That's why the government policies which you are framing and sitting in Delhi are not reaching completely to the grassroots level, although it's a very tough thing. But it's from the very beginning, from last 2 decades, it has increased, or 3 decades, it has increased drastically. But still, the gap is there. But my point is, if those small kitchens can be waived off, okay, let the Zomato has to pay the tax from where he is bringing, that is up to him. He will get benefit if there is somebody who is registered under GST or not, but not from those small players. Otherwise, those small kitchens run by a lady will die very natural death, and then they will be treated. The Zomato will deal only with those big restaurants who are going to have the GST number. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to intervene and interject, saying that, we don't frame policy sitting only in Delhi. Right now, I'm on a field visit in Kerala to understand the issues of implementation of a national mission, so that we can incorporate these back into the policy. Never can we do an armchair policy making, because it will not work on the ground. So I make it a point, and other policymakers also make it a point, to travel to the field and understand there's a lot of ground study that's done initially before a large program or a flagship program is announced. So apart from that, about the nano players coming under the GST, but as you know how GST works, if one player is under a GST, and if the resulting supply chain would all have to come under the GST net. So that is how the GST system works. But like I said, I would again say that perhaps the onus has to come on umbrella aggregators to actually train their vendors onto, or even make it their responsibility, or make them accountable, that their vendors also come onto the GST platform, because they can afford to actually have such systems and trainings in place for these smaller vendors.
Okay. Now I want to know from you, your views from the government side, definitely. How was the year 2021 for MSME?
Yes, so 2021, we saw a certain resilience and recovery from 2020. 2020 was a very bad year and it was impacting across sectors. So, and the government, of course, immediately reacted, and by the time took shape and they started rolling up, it took some time, but I think 21 was a better year than 20. We can see with the numbers, the statistics reflecting the large number of loans that were taken by the MSMEs from the government of India, and taking such help and collateral-free loans, etc. We have seen a certain revival happening, and also with the easing of lockdowns, I think it's going to be much better for the MSMEs.
And now, in the last question, what are your projections for 2022 for MSMEs?
Yeah, so like I said, things will improve, and if this, even if we see a third wave coming in, it would not be as drastic, and they would not be such stringent lockdown measures, and we should see to it that our MSMEs in construction industry, etc., does not get affected by the COVID. So it will only get better, I would say. So projections are bright because a lot of announcements by the government of India, a lot of programs and support. Never before, actually, if you see, actually recollect history, never before has MSMEs got so much of emphasis than this particular regime that we are seeing. So that one has to acknowledge that the MSMEs has come into the spotlight only in this government. Earlier, it was just a namesake MSME, a tag of MSME, but not so much benefits going into supporting MSMEs. So I think things are looking bright, and there's a general optimistic projection and also a realistic projection of the economy also recovering, and India is projected to be one of the largest economies going forward as well, at a growth rate of over 9% going forward as well, done by players like stakeholders like IMF and World Bank. So I think we have good times to look forward to.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Vinita Hariharan, for taking and giving all the answers of my very sometimes irritating straight questions, but you have given all the answers, and this shows that you are the real thought leader, and that's why you can, because it shows the knowledge what you have, because not only theoretical knowledge, the practical knowledge, as you said, that you have gone to the Kerala just to assess the situation about the planning, what you are doing there. So thank you very much. So viewers, you have seen today how the government of India do the work and how they are planning for everyone. And today we have our thought leader who is closely associated with MSME, has given all the roadmap, giving him in the past what happened. And it is very, very clear the government of India is doing day and night the work for the MSMEs in spite of the last 2 years, very bad years due to the pandemic. But in spite of that, how they have supported the MSMEs. Only thing is the MSMEs or the civil society has to think of themselves also. Are we wearing the mask? Are we keeping the physical distancing? Or we are crowding and we are not wearing the mask? If we will not do it, ultimately the lockdown is going to knock again. We have seen the night curfews. It is our responsibility. We try to put all the blames to the government. We all try to put all the blames to the bureaucrats. But we are to be blamed. If we will to support the government, if we will pay the taxes on time, if we will see to it that the government policies can be implemented on time, support them, then definitely there will be so many schemes which are already been implemented or which are going to be implemented in near future. The time is not far that we can proudly say that India will be the global leader soon. Thank you very much, Ms. Vinita Hariharan, for joining. I know that you are kind enough to join through, although you are traveling, but you have given all the replies, and I'm sure all our viewers got the reply very soon. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Bharat Post News, Caru News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor to bring to you everyday new topic. And tomorrow again, we have a thought leadership series in media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. And the topic is Serve to Save. And our chief guest is Rotarian Dr. Rajendra Agarwal. He is the Rotary District Governor, Mumbai District 3141, Mumbai. So he will be giving my state answers to my state questions again tomorrow. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Ms. Vinita Hariharan, for joining us and giving so, I must say, candid replies to all the questions. Thank you very much. And thank you all the viewers for watching our show. Thank you.
Apologies.